course, I'm gonna pick The Witch over The Princess. I think I've read 2 of them. Hello bookworms and welcome back to my channel. Oh, that's hot. Okay, for the pernickety people like me, I am one of you, we are one. I realise we're not quite halfway through the year yet. We still have a couple of weeks, well, a week and a half, until it is officially halfway through the year. But last year, I completely forgot about the mid-year recap tag until the end of July, so I was late. So I thought, better to be early than late this year. As you would have seen from the title, this is the mid-year recap tag. This is where we realise, bloody hell, we're halfway through the year, how the hell did that happen? Oh my god, there's so many books that I have to read that I haven't read yet. Oh my god, I'm gonna freak out. Get it? It's why it's called the mid-year recap tag. Anyway, let's get started. So the first question is, how many books have you read so far this year? So while we are on this question, I thought we would just do a quick zoom through my Storygraph statistics so far this year. So I've read 68 books this year, which means that I am 21 books ahead of schedule to get to my goal of 100. So if you follow me on Goodreads, you might be a little bit confused because my goal on Goodreads is 52. So that's the goal that I think is reachable. So that's the one I put on Goodreads. And then I have a secret goal, which is the goal that I put on Storygraph, of 100 books. But I'm on schedule. I'm ahead of schedule to get to 100 books. And then my pages goal is 45,000, which I think is 3,000 more than last year. And again, I'm ahead of schedule, 5,621 pages ahead of schedule. Quick look at my moods: emotional, adventurous, mysterious. That's definitely the kind of book that I read. Page number, mainly between the 300 to 500 mark, but more 500 plus than under 300. Again, one of my goals was to read longer books, so going well. Fiction, non-fiction. I need to read more non-fiction. Genres, of course, fantasy is my top genre, followed by young adult. So yeah, I've read, how many did I say? 68 books. I'm very happy with that number. What is the best book you've read so far? This is actually one that I read very recently, and it is The Lighthouse Witches by C.J. Cook. So there's a bit of a story as to why I picked this book up in the first place. In October time, I stayed in St Ives in Cornwall, which is one of my favourite places in the world, and I actually really like it at that time of year where it's sort of just getting colder. It's not quite winter yet, but there's just something so atmospheric about Cornwall in that time of the year. So when I saw this in the window of the bookshop in St Ives, really wanted it because I'm like, look at that cover, isn't it just freaking gorgeous? But anyway, I had already bought books on that trip and I was trying to ration how many books I was going to buy, so I didn't get it. But then Waterstones had their half price on all hardback sale over Christmas, and this was there, so I got it. It's basically a paranormal mystery with elements of fantasy, but you're not quite sure if it's fantasy or not the whole time you're reading it, which kind of makes it even more unsettling, which I loved. There's also like horror elements, very dark, very atmospheric, very mysterious, and I loved it. Definitely not appropriate reading for a heatwave in June, but nevertheless, I really enjoyed it, and it's definitely one that I will recommend to people over spooky season. What is the best sequel you have read so far? The Gifts That Bind Us by Caroline O'Donoghue. This is the sequel to All Our Hidden Gifts. Just look at those covers. They're stunning. I think this might be the only sequel I've read so far this year. No, it's not. I told a lie. I think I've already spoken about this series on my channel. But yeah, it's just a great YA, urban fantasy, witchy teens, queer characters, queer love. It's great. I really love this series. A new release that you haven't got around to reading but you can't wait to get to. Gallant by V. Schwab. This came out in March, I think. I pre-ordered it. This is the Waterstones exclusive edition with stencil edges, and it's also signed, which is pretty cool. Look at that. Yeah, I was very excited about this book coming out and also the pretty edition, but I did have a little bit of an issue with mine because it got delivered because I pre-ordered it and the stencil was really wonky, but it had also been delivered like without a receipt. But it was fine in the end because obviously I'd ordered it online, so I had like my order confirmation and stuff, and I did manage to swap it for a new not wonky one without them like all selling out. But because of like the stress of that situation, I just sort of put it on the shelf and forgot about it. That's why I haven't read it yet, but I still am very excited to get to it because I read The Invisible Life of ElleRead last year and fell in love. Honestly, that book is just beautiful and it spoke to me on a spiritual level. So I just know I'm gonna love the writing style. I also just love the gothic genre, and also the fact that this is like illustrated, fully illustrated, which is gorgeous. I think now though, I'm probably gonna save this until spooky season because I feel like it is a spooky season appropriate book. Most anticipated book for the latter half of the year. I think this is technically a book that's coming out in the latter half of the year. Maybe not. It's not out yet, but I do own it. This is Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reid, and this comes out next week, I think. Definitely comes out at the end of June. This was my most anticipated release of the entire year because I read The Wolf and the Woodsman last year, which was her first book, and that book is incredible. It is one of my all-time favourite books. So when I heard that Ava Reid was doing a retelling of The Juniper Tree, which is a Grimm's fairy tale, I love all of the old traditional fairy tales. Give me a traditional fairy tale retelling any day. Give me a retelling by Ava Reid all day, every day. I love Ava Reid's writing style. They are so like dark and gruesome in their writing and I just love it. Anyway, I managed to get my hands on a advanced reader copy. That's how far through I am. I've only had it a day. I love it. I love it. I can already tell that this is going to be my favourite book of the year. Like 100%. I know that because this is coming out in June, it's technically not coming out in the latter half of the year, but it hasn't come out yet and it was my most anticipated read of the year, so I'm counting it. Most disappointing book. My most disappointing book definitely goes to As Good as Dead? Is that what it's called? Yeah, As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. This is the third book in the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. The reason this is my most disappointing book is because I adored the first book in the series and I enjoyed the second book in the series. The third one, however, really wasn't for me. I mean, I think I said in whichever month's wrap up it was in, I did say that it's definitely a Marmite book, and I think that's true. I think you are either gonna love the direction that the third book goes in or you're gonna hate it. I just hated it. I hated it. And yeah, I don't think I've ever been so disappointed in a book. And it, honestly, I felt it deep in my soul, like how sad I was that I didn't enjoy it. I still loved the first one, so. Most surprising book. I think my most surprising book was Twin Crowns by Catherine Doyle and Catherine Webber. This is a YA fantasy rom-com romp. I hear you asking, Elle, isn't YA fantasy like your favourite genre ever? You would be correct. But I think the reason it was so surprising how much I loved it was just how light-hearted it was. Basically, I love a dark tale. Like I said, I love like Grimm's fairy tale, Hans Christian Andersen, like the proper traditional dark, disturbing fairy tales. And I love it when people retell them even darker than the original. I don't know why. Maybe it's the little goth girl inside of me, the little emo teenager that I was. I just love a dark tale. So, you know, this is not that. This is, how do I describe it? Do you know like Ella Enchanted? If you haven't seen the movie, it was a book, but I haven't read the book. But yeah, my reference is the movie. So it's like high fantasy, so you know, kingdoms, kings and queens, princesses, fairies, magic, trolls, you know, all like the traditional high fantasy creatures, but it's like ridiculous. It's like funny and light-hearted and not that serious. And as much as I love Ella Enchanted, like Ella Enchanted was probably one of my favourite films growing up, it's just not what I would class as my favourite kind of fantasy. Like, as I said, I like dark fantasy. Creepy, gory, disgusting, grim. which is not what this is. This is very much in the Ella Enchanted realm of things. It is light-hearted, it's funny, it's romantic, it's not that serious, and I just loved it. I had such a lovely time reading this book. Proper escapism is how I would describe this book. I definitely expected to enjoy it because, as I said, I love YA fantasy, and I love any kind of fantasy really, especially witchy fantasy, because this is a witchy book. So I definitely did expect to enjoy it, but I don't think I expected it to rank so high. New favourite author. An author that I've been introduced to this year that I have really enjoyed their work of is Marissa Meyer. So Marissa Meyer wrote the Lunar Chronicles, which is a series that I read in its entirety at the beginning of the year. Absolutely fell in love with it, and since then I've also read her new book, which is the start of a new series, Gilded. I didn't enjoy that as much as the Lunar Chronicles, but it has definitely confirmed that I really enjoy Marissa Meyer as an author. Again, she writes fairy tale retellings, which I think we've come to understand is like my favourite genre, my favourite subgenre, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next book in the Gilded series coming out. I'm intrigued to see where that series goes, like what direction it goes in. Newest fictional crush. I don't really get fictional crush. I don't get crushes full stop, let alone fictional ones. Ace Power. I usually change this to like newest favourite love interest. I can't think of anybody. Who have I enjoyed? Oh, I know the answer to this question. Can I be bothered to get the book down because it's on the top shelf? No, I can't. I'll insert a picture here. A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saft. The romance in this is Chef's Kiss. That rhymed. And yeah, my favourite, probably a new favourite love interest would be Wes. Newest favourite character. Okay, I'm gonna give two answers for this one, just because I haven't actually finished this book yet. But the first answer is Marlin Chen from Juniper and Thorn. She's the main protagonist. She is me. Like, literally, I see so much of myself in her. But as I said, only 100 pages into this one, so as much as I am loving her, I don't feel like I can give her as an answer quite yet, because I haven't finished this. But my other answer is Ren from Twin Crowns. I love both the twins, but Ren is my favourite. Of course, I'm gonna pick the witch over the princess. An underrated gem. My underrated gem is It Only Happens at the Movies, or Only Happens in the Movies. Only Happens in the Movies by Holly Bourne. Yeah, I just don't really feel like I hear that many people talking about Holly Bourne. This is the second and a half book that I've read by Holly Bourne. I read her book Am I Normal Yet? Quite a few years ago now. I was probably about 18 when I read that one. And then I read her novella, What Magic Is This? Have I made up that title? No, it is called What Magic Is This? I read this when I had COVID, and it cheered me right up because I was a miserable sod when I had COVID, and rightly so, because it was not nice. But yeah, this is a great YA for older readers. I will point out there's some more mature themes in this one. I love books that just deal with messy feelings, and I think Holly Bourne does that really well. What books have you reread this year? I'm a serial rereader, so I think I reread quite a lot. I'm just gonna have to go through my Goodreads. I reread the Lord of the Rings trilogy this year, which is something that I've wanted to do in a very long time. Very much enjoyed. Love the Lord of the Rings, love Tolkien. I reread The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I've got a pretty version in the background. I'm going to show you my pretty version. This is the Illumicrate edition of The Starless Sea. It's freaking gorgeous. But yeah, I reread The Starless Sea this year, and I could reread this book forever, honestly. I would highly recommend rereading this book if you have already read it and enjoyed it, because there was so much that I didn't see the first time round, because just how detailed this book is. The Heartstoppers. I reread all 4 of the Heartstopper novels in preparation for Heartstopper Netflix. And I think that is, oh no, Circe. I also reread Circe by Madeline Miller. Another one of my favourites. That's it. So I reread Lord of the Rings trilogy, Starless Sea, Heartstoppers, and Circe so far this year. But as I said, I love rereading stuff. I'm a serial rereader. A book that made you cry. I actually haven't cried at a book this year, which is quite unusual for me because I'm quite an emotional person. But yeah, I haven't cried at any books yet. But there are two that I've gotten like choked up at, so I'm gonna count them. The first one is Crying in H-Mart by Michelle Zayner. This is a memoir about her experience with losing her mom and sort of reconnecting with her mother and her family through food and cooking. It's incredibly raw, it's incredibly honest, and there was definitely moments where I got very choked up. And the other one that I found myself getting choked up at was The Lighthouse Witches. There was a bit very close to the end where very close to tears. But yeah, I feel like I need to step up my game when it comes to crying at books because I haven't cried at anything this year. A book that made you happy. These are all books I've already mentioned. Definitely Twin Crowns. This cheered me right up. It Only Happens at the Movies. This one didn't make me happy, but it's very, very funny. But it's not the most happy of ending. But yeah, definitely made me laugh. Heartstopper. Heartstopper, 100%. I know it was a reread, but Heartstopper always makes me happy. Just brings me all of the joy. Most beautiful book you've purchased or received as a gift. I actually found this a lot harder to answer than I expected, just because so many books these days are just stunning. But I went with Electra by Jennifer Saint. This is the same author as Ariadne, which is a book I read this year and really loved. Just look at it. I don't have to explain. There's also the fact that it does match Ariadne, which again brings me a lot of joy. Just look at that gold foiling. And finally, what books do you need to get to by the end of the year? I actually made a list at the start of the year of 22 books that I wanted to get to by the end of the year. So 22 books for 2022. I think I've read 2 of them. I actually made a video with those 22 books that I want to read by 2022, which you can watch here. So a little update on that. I have read 2 of them and DNF'd 1. On that list, the ones that I have read so far are Ariadne by Jennifer Saint and Law by Alexandra Bracken. And I DNF'd Red, White and Royal Blue. I mean, I think I get half a point because on that list is 1984 by George Orwell, and I recently read Animal Farm by George Orwell. Right author, wrong book. Realistically, I think books on that list that I really, really want to get to this year, and I'll be sad if I don't get to, are If We Were Villains. Considering that I am going to university to study a theatre degree, I think it is about time that I read If We Were Villains. Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney, because I bought the hardback of that because I was so excited to read it. Have I read it yet? No. Has the paperback come out? Yes, it has. So I need to get a bloody move on and read that book. And the other one is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, because I've been saving that for the summer. We are now very close to summer, so I reckon I'll read that soon. I'm doing very badly when it comes to that 22 books for 2022 challenge. It is kind of ridiculous though that 22 books in the scheme of things. I've read 68 books. I've only read 2 on that list. Struggles of being a mood reader. That was the mid-year freak-out tag. I'm definitely freaking out, especially after looking through my 22 books for 2022 and realising that I've only read 2 of them. That is all of the questions. I will leave them in the description if you want to have a go yourself. Ooh, also, let me know how many books you've read so far this year and are you on track to reach your reading goal? I'm going to wrap this up now because I really want to get back to reading Juniper and Thorn because I'm loving it. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to press the thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. Thanks for watching and happy reading.